Welcome back to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this show is all about reconnecting with your natural state of being, finding out what it means to be truly natural AF and living your best life, living and reaching for that higher self. And this has been a challenge. It's always a challenge when you're doing that, when you're reaching outside of whatever's comfortable. And sometimes life gives you opportunities to really level up. And this past storm and the delays and the power outages and internet outages have added to that. But we're here and we're ready for another great episode.
So obviously this is coming out a couple of days later than usual. We were without power and internet for almost a week. Yeah. Well after the storm had passed, we still had no power. And adds to the mix kitchen renovation and family visiting. Health issues. It's just all come at once. So it has been a very challenging week. But as always, we take everything as an opportunity for growth. It was actually a nice time with the family because we had no other choice with no power and no internet to just be with each other and really enjoy each other's company. So that was really nice. But yeah, lots of challenges this last week. Yeah.
And in the area on the news and all that, they seemed to hype it up a bit, like the storm is going to be this massive, massive thing. Call it a cyclone. It wasn't really a cyclone. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I never saw the little spinny wheel of doom coming our way. It was more of just a big tropical storm with lots of rain. And thank God we didn't have too many trees fall down. It was just some branches and just lots of rain.
Yeah. So. Yeah, lots of rain. So lots of places flooded around where we are. I think some places had trees come down and a bit of damage, but I mean, we had a storm hit about a month ago that was way worse than this. No weather warning, and came and went within a few hours, and we recovered from that. So we're going to recover from this, and it's fine.
So we recorded this during the first parts of that storm, and the whole internet for us sort of went funky and dropped out halfway through. So we patched it up as best we could. Sorry for that. If it sounds or looks disjointed, that's why. And yeah, I also want to give you a heads up on the audio. The audio isn't great for Jimmy and Kate's side. It's just always a challenge when you have two people with different volumes and different types of voice recording onto a laptop speaker or something. So not every single one of our guests has their own podcast and does a podcast studio to give the nice, clean, professional look and sound. But the information is so valuable and so heartfelt and just useful for people that are, one, building their relationships consciously like we are, and building a business or starting it out and overcoming challenges. So we talk about a lot of really good things in this episode.
Yeah, we met Jimmy and Kate at the Living Free Festival last year. So that was August 2024. And just since then, we've just I feel like we just became instant friends, and then they moved up just a couple of hours away from us, and we do the markets, a lot of the same markets together, and we've become really good friends with them. And they're such a beautiful couple, and we just love that, the way that they are as individuals, how they are in their relationship, it really extends to their business. And you can see that their business is very different and also doing very well because they put so much good intention into it, and they just see it very differently to, just your run-of-the-mill standard business that how most people, I guess, would run it like in the mainstream. And yeah, we love this conversation. I had so much fun recording this interview with them. And I think lots of people, there's a lot of takeaways from this, especially if you do have your own business, just about how you can do things a little differently and with more consciousness, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I find them inspirational, and there's a few little things about how they make their products that I'm actually going to start working with when I make the products for a natural art form. So we'll try that out and let you know how it goes.
So as always, guys, we're self-sponsored through our business, Natural Art Form. You can support us by purchasing products by going to naturalartform.com. And for our listeners, you'll get 10% off your order. That's any order. So using the code NaturalAF10, you'll get 10% off your entire order.
So the business is, we have a small operation in America and a small operation here in Australia. We ship almost worldwide. We have shipping out of the US to most of Europe. So you can check out on the website or shoot us a message if you wonder if we ship to your country. Just naturalartform.com is a little chat button on the website that's really convenient. So you can actually message us there, or you can hit us up on Instagram or any of our socials. So we've had a lot of really good feedback from our previous customers, people with different chronic issues or just topical pain relief needs. And they really enjoy the difference that Alleviate is compared to other things on the market, without the menthol and without pharmaceutical pain drugs and all that stuff. We like to do things as natural AF as possible with natural art form. So if you want to see some of the reviews and check out the products for yourselves, you know where to find it.
And of course, you can always support us non-monetarily by liking this episode, subscribing wherever you're listening, and drop us a comment. We love getting comments, whether that's through social media, whether it's on Spotify. A lot of people don't know this, but you can actually comment on episodes on Spotify. And we love to hear the feedback from the episodes and what people think and any input that you guys have. So please feel free to reach out to us.
Yeah. Oh, and just before we get into it, it'd be interesting to see who our listeners would like for us to interview about weather modification. This storm brought up some different topics and conversations that we had privately with our family, and there's just a lot going on with all that. And we were suspicious that there might have been some either weather modification going on or intended to go on that may or may not have been interrupted by very powerful, conscious individuals like ourselves and our friends. So, but if you have anybody that you would want us to interview that specializes in that, or maybe is a whistleblower or has worked in those fields and knows something about it, I would love to have a conversation with them. So,
absolutely. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Jimmy and Kate are the owners and founders of Myoko Embodied, a tallow skincare brand with a difference. Drawing inspiration from the pristine nature and rich cultural history of Myoko, Japan, Jimmy and Kate craft luxurious, organic, and highly effective tallow-based skincare products, utilizing both physical and metaphysical techniques to create conscious, empowering products. In ancient times, Mount Myoko was known as Mount Meru, the sacred center of the universe, a place with deep reverence that cultures across the world considered the birthplace of creation. At Myoko Embodied, Jimmy and Kate embrace this profound philosophy and have founded their brand on a simple truth that everything operates on frequency. Thoughts, emotions, and language all influence the physical world on a cellular level. You are the center of your own universe, and everything flows outward from within. Welcome, guys. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
I actually just got cold shivers as I was reading that out, just because the whole philosophy of your brand, and like, even I didn't know that was what Mount Myoko, like there was all this meaning around it. It's so beautiful.
History. It's like insanely spiritual history, and it's why we felt so drawn to the area originally. Pretty epic.
Wow. Okay. Well, I've got so many questions, but I'll wait. I've got so many questions just on that. Let's just open it up first and foremost to give you guys the floor, just to introduce yourselves a little bit and share a bit of your own, your own personal journeys and a little bit of your own story and how you guys ended up meeting and doing the work that you're doing today. So whoever wants to go first.
Okay.
How you going? Well, me and Kate actually met in Japan. So going back about 7 years ago, right? Yeah. 7 years ago. Me and Kate were both working over there for like a winter season. So Japan has very big winters, a lot of snow, and especially in this area where Myoko is, we were actually in another town called Hakuba, which is probably about 2 hours away from Myoko originally. And that's where we met. We kind of went over there to do the winter season separately, individually. We met in Japan, not in Australia, and went over there together. We kind of...
we met in a place called the Rabbit Hole as well. So as soon as we walked, we fell down the rabbit hole together.
Very much so. We're both on our own, very kind of awakening paths at this time of... the reality of the universe and where we live and what's going on, etc. And funnily enough, at that exact moment was like, we were both on that path anyways, but we then met at a bar, which I was managing at the time, and Kate came over to work for the season. And yeah, as Kate said, the bar was named the Rabbit Hole. So couldn't be more simple at the time. And this is 2018, so 2 years before COVID kind of kicked off. But at this time, I mean, we can go, I guess after this, we'll go back into earlier history and stuff. But for myself, even prior to that, my whole life, almost since teenage years, had been pretty much looking into a lot of this stuff anyways, in terms of like, I guess, metaphysical and awake stuff. But yeah, we obviously met there very synchronistically and very much kind of felt very meant to be. It was very like knew each other from a past life scenario when we met, definitely, like immediately, like the moment.
Oh, totally.
I still remember the moment where like Kate came around the corner, like, oh, like, I know this person. And anyway, we got together, we kind of, we were still in very much, we were drinking at the time, and it was very much a party kind of scenario at that time. So it was very different to kind of our lives now. And I think it was more like this scenario of us meeting that forced us into getting out of that, all of that stuff. And it was like this really quick awakening, so to speak, spiritual awakening of like, we quit drinking, we quit all of these things. We're like talking about just life and all the things that we were kind of, researching and knowing about at that time. Then we moved back to Australia because we were there for 4 months, moved back to Australia, got together we were committed to each other at that time, I guess you would say. And then we were in Australia for like 6 months.
Yes.
And then went back to Japan in late 2019 and to do the snow season again. So I was managing that same venue and I would do that in the winters over in Japan. And so they would send me over. Kate came over to work again. And we had quit drinking at this point, and it was a bar, right? So it was a really full-on bar. Like, it was very busy. It was very, like, party. It was, like, you hosting people who are on holiday. It's a tourism location, right? So it's a ski town. And so everyone that's there wants to party all the time, basically. They're all on holiday, so it's every day is Saturday, basically. And so running a bar and trying to do your job well, you have to be able to host that party, basically. You have to be able to make sure the party's going at all times, ready for these people to come in, and be high energy, and you really have to keep going. We were drinking at this time because the previous season where we met, we were drinking too much. So we were over there, completely quit drinking, and we were like, we can do this. We can still do this same thing without drinking, basically. We can still keep that energy. And it was kind of like a test for ourselves as well, I guess. Let's do it. Let's try and push ourselves. Let's not drink this whole winter. And so we went over there, didn't drink. I had like a Fireball bottle or like a whiskey bottle full of apple juice, and so still keeping the party going. Whenever all the people come up and they want to have a shot with you and all this kind of stuff, I would just pour myself a shot of apple juice and have an apple juice shot. So keep the party going. Anyway, all of that aside, a lot of that kind of during that season of realization where like we were completely sober while everyone was drunk permanently, basically, it was a big eye opener onto what's going on in like society and how people are living and how people are treating each other, and especially with alcohol as an influence. We were both very like, whoa, this is not cool and this is not very normal. Like the way people are acting, being sober in a bar constantly full of drunk people. It was very eye-opening. And because you're usually in that scenario, you're either a little bit tipsy or you're drinking or whatever, but when you're in that and you're doing it every day, it was a massive eye-opener for us about how people were treating each other and how...
and you really saw, spirits come into them and take over people.
Wow.
Watching them from across the bar, you could see that as clear as day, that it wasn't them anymore.
Yeah.
And they're so drunk, they allowed those spirits to come in and take over them. And it's just when you're sober for a whole season watching that's exactly what it is. And
wow, that's fascinating.
We were aware of that at this time. We were very we had looked into all of this stuff before. We were very knowledgeable about spirits and all this kind of stuff prior to this because it would interested us. And me going back a long time, I can't speak for myself, but me going back a long time, it was very interesting to me. And so seeing that, it was really obvious and it was very apparent what was going on. And it kind of, we talked about this openly at the time, like, wow, this is really quite mind-blowing to see what's happening here. You know, like, this, I guess, spirits taking it and allowing this. We see it everywhere. Bars are everywhere. It's in every culture almost now. It's normalized in every culture. And so going to like they, I guess, who are you know, those who pull the strings in the world, allowing, you know, weed's not legal. Not that I think weed is a solution of this necessary scenario, but this is a plant that's natural and is caused in everywhere. You can grow it anywhere. It's natural. And we have cannabinoid receptors in our brain. But anyway, irrelevant. The drinking is like, it's being allowed everywhere. And so anyway, we noticed this. It was a big thing for us.
Yeah. Well, sorry, just before you go on, Jimmy, I just want to say look at during COVID, that's what it just reminded me, when everything was locked down, look at what was open.
Yeah.
Fast food was all open. Bottle shops were still open. And all of these things, and it's all these things that it's like, exactly. And if that was really about our health, those things would have been locked down as well, but they weren't. And I think that's very much on purpose.
100%.
But you have to wear your mask to go in and buy your
right.
Liquid poison.
Ridiculous.
For your safety.
So we kind of got to this point. This was late 2019, and then the end of that season, so the winter goes in Japan from like December to March. So December 2019 to March 2020. And so we had this flight booked out going to go back to Australia in April of 2020. And that was just going to be our life again, you know, back to Australia and see what happens. And then maybe go back and do the winter again. We'll see what happens. And then we got to like early March 2020. And everyone started losing their shit and going crazy. Like the world's closing down. People are sick. We're closing the world down for it. And at this time, me and Kate had been looking into the, I guess, astrology of 2020. In 2019, we had looked in very greatly into the astrology of 2020 with the knowledge that massive shit is going to go down and like really crazy stuff was going to happen. Financial things were going to collapse. Like a lot of collapsing was going to happen, and a big shift out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And so we knew this in 2019. And so we got to March 2020. We were doing our job. We were just doing normal things. We weren't really, I don't know, not expecting anything, but that was in the back of our mind. And then all of this talk came around about, you know, people getting sick and we're closing the world down. And me and Kate kind of were like, we looked at each other, we're like, this is what we were looking at last year. So we were kind of I was telling our staff, like, don't panic. I've done this before, SARS, MERS, you know, it's the same shit.
Right.
But nobody was listening. And we were kind of pretty aware of what was going on from that moment onwards and that it was pretty much bullshit. And it got to like March 14, right? March 14, March 15. And because all of this, it was a tourist area, right? There was 2 days where the entire town just emptied. And there was this shift of kind of excitement and what's going on, and still everyone was living on their holiday best, to this 2-day period where it went from that energy to really dark and very much fear. Like you could feel it everywhere. Everyone left the town in that snap of 2 days. So it went from probably close to hundreds of thousands, maybe 100,000 people in the town. So like, I don't know, 10,000 people, maybe less.
Wow.
So a drop of like tenfold of people.
What a buzzkill.
It was a massive buzzkill, but it was also it felt very fearful and very dark, and we didn't really know what was going on.
But we were quite calm. And we were trying to calm people down, like just make the decision you need to make, but you don't need to get into that fear state and like amplify it.
Yeah.
So we were just like, everyone like, just, it's all right, relax. Like, it's probably not what we think as well. And of course it wasn't. But then Jimmy owned a lodge in Myoko, so he bought that a few years earlier with some friends. And so we kind of knew we had somewhere safe to go.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
we kind of made a like, let's forget about our flight. It's probably going to get cancelled anyway in April. And we just fled to Myoko, and it was the beginning of a new life. It was almost like a rebirth.
It was a massive rebirth.
Wow.
Yeah. Wait, so the bar that you were working at, what town was that in?
In Hakuba, which is about 2 hours. It's in the Japanese Alps, so it's still a snow town, still in the same general region, and they're quite close, but there's a big kind of mountain range between the two. So to get from Hakuba to Myoko, you have to go around the mountain range. So it takes about 2 hours, but if you could go as the crow flies, it would be, 20 minutes. It's very close. You can see it standing on top of each of the mountains. You can see Myoko and you can see Hakuba, but there's a big mountain range between, so you got to go around. So it's about 2 hours away.
Right.
But they're both big snow towns, heavy snow towns. In fact, Myoko itself is the heaviest. It's the snowiest place on Earth quite regularly.
Oh,
so
wow.
it has a huge energy of where it's literally has the highest snowfall on Earth pretty regularly. So a lot of winters, it's number one snowiest place on Earth.
Wow.
Wow. So how long did you guys end up there before you could come home?
So we're there 2019 to 2023.
Yeah,
I think.
4 years.
So you guys were just like, we're just gonna stay.
Well, that wasn't the plan. We kind of got So we got to all of this came about in Hakuba, and then we moved to the lodge, which out of also random synchronicity, me and two friends had purchased a few years before to do up. We'd heard about this place, Myoko. It was a very quiet snow town at the time. And we were like, wow, cheap property, let's do it up and have our own little ski lodge. That'll be amazing. And we went over there, and the first day that I had ever been to Myoko, we bought a ski lodge there. So that was the first day.
So you're literally every person on holidays that goes somewhere and like, I want to live here, I want to move here, but you actually did it.
Well, we actually did it, exactly right. So that was a few years before on like one of my first times in Japan, or second time in Japan, where I was actually working there though. So a few months there, bought it. Anyway, so we had this ski lodge there, and there was no tourism, right? So the ski lodge, we were going to close it up. And so me and Kate were like, it's all good. This is going to fly over, or something's going to happen, and we'll go and wait it out in the lodge. And it was in the middle of the forest, like literally in the middle of the forest. It was like a 5 acre block of land. Sorry, a 1 acre block of land, 5,000 square meter block of land. So an acre and a half, roughly. And in all of it was forest. And so it was the most peaceful and beautiful place. And a very similar vibe to your cabin, actually, guys.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, really beautiful and very nature-based. And so we went over there, and we just were like, this is where we're going to be, and we'll see what happens. And then they started closing flights down left, right, and centre. And at that point, we were kind of like pretty convinced that this was like, we already knew about the astrology as we were talking about, and it was happening in front of our eyes. And I think we both also at that time heard about the plan of, mass kind of, fear and I guess vaccinating the world basically, which, it shouldn't be a taboo thing to talk about because they were saying that on the news. So they were talking about wanting to vaccinate the world.
Exactly.
And so, it feels weird for me to say it out loud, but
yeah, it's funny actually, because when you said you're like, we knew this was coming, that was kind of like some of the like OG quote unquote conspiracy theorists that have like known this shit for 20 years. They were just like, oh my God, this is this huge event that they've been talking about. Like they knew. And for my mum, because my mum, like our sort of way into all this was like through vaccination, because I was vaccine injured as a child. And then my mum researched, and my younger brother's never had a vaccine in his life. And when 2020 came around, all this happened, she actually called our friend Meryl Dorey, who we've had on the show. She's the founder of the Australian Vaccination Risks Network, and she's been a family friend for like 30 years. Mum called her and she was like, oh my God, Meryl, this is the mass vaccination that they knew was coming, because they've always talked about this huge event that's going to come, and they're going to do this mass vaccination thing. And that's exactly what happened. So it just made me laugh when you said like, we knew this was coming, because I feel like there was a very small minority of the population that were all doing that too. They were just like, we saw this. Yeah.
I had been following a lot of those people that you're talking about since I was like 16 years old. So for me, it was the same. It was like, I remember hearing David Icke talking about this, like, in, like, my teenage years. And I was like, it was interesting to me, but I didn't know it was what was happening in my lifetime and what wasn't. And I don't know, it was just like, oh, cool. And then go on with my life, because what else was happening before 2019? Everyone was just doing their life, you know, whether you were aware or not. And I didn't really think this would ever be talked about publicly, to be honest. When I was like, before I met Kate, I had talked to nobody about any of this stuff, and it was just like something that was, like, well, I like to read about all this shit, but I can't talk to anybody about this.
He was so excited when he met someone that was, like, curious.
Yeah. Someone asked me questions. I was like, what? And so we would just go deep into all these things, and this was like how we spent, interestingly enough, because we met in 2018 and we spent that 6 months in Australia in 2019, that was kind of what we spent 2019 doing. Kate was just like asking me all these questions about things, and we were just like, yeah, let's go. Like, and we just dove headfirst into everything. And so it was very fun, and like we got along really well, and it got us really, and it was like dive in now because you're going to see it firsthand next year. Like, and then it happened. And so it was very much, here it is, you know, this is what's the truth, basically.
Yeah. And I actually want to ask you, Kate, because like you said, Jimmy, you kind of, and for anyone listening, Jimmy has the one line in his profile in Human Design, which is the investigator, and that is Jimmy to a T. Like, when he's interested in something, he will go to the depths of the earth to find out of everything about what he's interested in.
I just think we can, like, the notes. Like, give me
it's like, find out what you're coming tomorrow morning, and I'm like, oh, no.
So, but for you, Kate, like, what was that journey like for you? Because obviously for Jimmy, that was, because I think it's actually quite, for our generation anyway, that's actually quite unusual for you, Jimmy, to be at such a young age coming to those things. Like, I don't really know anyone that found that until later in life. But what was that journey like for you, Kate, in terms of sort of like how you grew up and then how you started to maybe question things or look into things about the true nature of the world?
Yeah, for me, I think it was just like an innate knowing that something's off. I don't have all the like knowledge that I can spill out like Jimmy does. Like, I don't go into like depth of like names of people and like all that kind of structure to it all. But I just have always felt that something's off in society, and I really needed like going to school, doing any like programs. Like, there's just so much in my like in all my body that was like, nah, like this, something's off.
Very anti-authority as well.
Yeah, very just like driven by my own will and desire to do things. That's why I hated people telling me I couldn't do things, or like school, like putting you in a direction you don't even want to go in, or like just teaching people in ways that isn't even good for them. Like, not everyone learns in the same way. So it's like, I always was just very aware of that. So I, wagged most of school, didn't really go. And just had a really strong drive to get out in the world. So that's how I went to Japan. And then I met Jimmy, who just started like telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I learned so much.
You guys are so perfect for each other in that way, because you just had this intuition, and I've got to say your intuition is so on point. Like, one of the very early conversations we had about someone that you met, and you were just so bang on about your gut instinct when you first met them. And then Jimmy, you're just the perfect person to come along, because you're like, I have all the knowledge and the facts. I'll tell you everything, and just like confirm her intuition.
I know that. I feel that.
I love that.
Well, what about on the astrology side? Who was more interested in learning and exploring the astrology?
In 2019 or now? In 2019.
Before,
I think it was more like people that we were watching had a lot of astrology knowledge, and things we were reading were referring back to it a lot, and a lot of that back then. And so it was more like external of us, whereas I think now we're very into astrology personally, because we get it now a lot more. Whereas back then I think it was a bit more external of us. Like we had just seen and it made sense. And so we were like, oh, shit, you're right. Something is going to happen at that time. And it was more like it was our own research, but more like external research. Whereas now I think we have a lot more of a knowing and a feeling
Yeah, I get that. I get that because I feel like now I used to like watch like, you know, the monthly astrology thing from, you know, for Taurus or whatever. And then, you know, sometimes I actually wish I watched her more, but Pam Gregory, she's amazing astrologist. I don't know if you guys know her, but yeah, I used to watch that more often and to know what's coming up. Whereas now I feel like I actually feel the energy. And then based on things that are going on, I'm like, oh, I'm really curious as to what's going on. And quite often whatever's happening astrologically or cosmologically is pretty much in tune with what I feel is going on. So I kind of get that, where it's more of an inner knowing now that stuff's going on. Yeah.
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 So
there
Kate,
was a, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to invite Kate to share more of her story, but bringing you from where you grew up, and you mentioned that you didn't like doing the status quo thing. You wanted to see the world. But was there a certain life moment that put you on this trajectory to go to Myoko or to go to Japan in general?
For Japan, it was actually never on my radar. Like, knew nothing about Japan, had no knowledge. I didn't even know they really had snow a month before I went there. But I fell in love with snowboarding, and I wanted to find somewhere to go and do a season. And I tried to go to Canada, but I missed out on getting a visa because they like close their visa applications at certain times in the year. So I like just missed that opportunity, but it was meant to be. And then through a friend who was going to Japan, and she got a job at the Rabbit Hole as well. She was like, well, why don't you come to Japan? I'll ask if they need somebody else. And yeah, it kind of worked out like that. I was kind of just like pushed onto this path of like, no, you're going to Japan. Like, there's someone you need to meet. There's places you need to see here. Like, it was very much like I was pulled there. Like, I wanted to travel and everything, but I knew not a word of Japanese going there. Like, had no idea about Japan. And I was just like, okay, like I'm going. Like, I wanted something, so this is where I'm going. And then when I got there, like it all made sense that I was supposed to go there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So let's fast forward a little bit. We'll jump back. Sorry, because we're kind of jumping around. So let's talk about how Myoko Embodied was born, because obviously you guys spent a few years there, and that's where you started the tallow skincare company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because we knew we were there, like couldn't get home, and we were very into natural products ourselves, and Japan does not have a natural products like industry at all.
Wow.
So they're very heavy on like chemicals in everything. So they have like, you know, bubblegum flavored toothpaste and just like crazy fragrances. They're very into all of that. It's just like you can't find natural soaps or anything, especially in the countryside. Tokyo is a little bit import a lot of stuff, but so we were just like, well, let's start making things for ourselves. Like, let's start making what we want to use. We started making soaps, laundry detergent, toothpaste.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, a whole bunch of natural products and selling them at markets originally.
And it just kind of got more popular because other foreigners wanted that as well. So we just started like selling to foreigners.
This is kind of like in the middle of 2020.
Yeah.
Like summer of 2020. So summer over there is like June, July, August.
Yeah. So it was also a hobby for us. Like, we were like, what do we do? We have no work or anything. So it was just fun to like get creative and learn how to make this stuff as well. And then,
Sorry, go.
I was going to say, and then it just started getting more and more popular, like very natural, like, foreigners wanted the products as well. We started doing local markets. So we started learning Japanese there because that's all we could do is speak in Japanese to sell. So we just went head first into learning Japanese then as well. And then, we started shipping all over Japan. Like, it just slowly grew and grew and grew, and we got a website up and people were ordering from all over Japan, which we were just like, at that time, amazing.
That's cool.
Also, it was very, where we were, like, finding ourselves in Myoko at that time, going back a little bit as well, it was, like, the most relieving and beautiful and, like, as we were talking about before, just, like, spiritually profound place where we just like found ourselves right in the middle of the craziest time in our existence, you know. And we just were like, it was like a gift being there. It was like, okay, you guys are in this scenario, we'll pop you up there, you know, and just be there and stay out of it for a moment and just be free. And that's how it felt. It was so like spiritually profound and like so amazing. And we went out to Tokyo to do some rallies, actually, to do like protesting because we didn't want to get vaccinated, basically. And so we went out to Tokyo, where the only ones in Japan that we knew were happening. So we drove 6 hours the morning of the protest to Tokyo, parked our car with one friend who was also on the same level, the only other person at the time in Myoko that was on the same level as us, thinking-wise. And we all drove out there, went to this protest, and we just met an bunch of amazing people that first time. And it was just like, oh, my God, guys, you all need to get out of Tokyo. Come and live in Myoko. It's the most beautiful place. And so one by one, they all did come and live in Myoko. We created this beautiful group of people who came over to buy houses and came out to live there. We helped them all find houses and move into Myoko and get out of the city at that time, which was essential at that time. And it became this like absolutely beautiful little hub, and it became our like center of existence. And as we discussed, Myoko was known in ancient times as the center of all existence. It was known as Mount Meru, which is where everything begins and spirals outwards from. And so it became that for us, and it truly was that for us as well. And it wasn't just that for us. It holds that energy. It's like quite unbelievable. Anyone watching now, just Google Mount Myoko and you can see Mount Myoko, and it's like in its grandness, but it's very profound.
Well, I was looking at the photos you've got of it on your website. Stunning, absolutely stunning. I actually have no other words for it than that. It's so beautiful. Yeah,
that was why we named it Myoko Embodied, because it was like the business. So we named the business Myoko Embodied because it was just like it was a time that changed our life dramatically, where we were living, and also it was just a location that changed our life, and I think can change a lot of lives, and is like so spiritually profound that like what it was known historically as, when people were a lot more tapped in energetically and spiritually, was the energetic center of the universe. So it's quite amazing.
And we wanted to implement into that because it's Myoko Embodied, so it is embodying that you are actually the center of the universe as well. And what everything you think, say and feel is what you create outside of you. So you're creating everything in your life. It all spirals out from you. So it's to embody that profound reality that's what you are. You are Mount Meru, you are the center of the universe.
And you create from your point onwards. So ultimately, as we know, because we've discussed it before with you guys, we are the creators of our own reality, and that's really the way that it works. It's just ultimately we create everything.
The good and the bad.
And it's all balanced. So it's quite profound of a place. And so
I think that's such, by the way, I'm so glad you guys have a place there, because we've already said we're so doing a trip there with you, because I never even would have ever come. Maybe I would have, but I'd never heard of Myoko before I met you guys, and didn't know anything about it. And now that I do, I'm like, we have to go and visit there. Like, it just sounds incredible.
A lot of people we meet will say that, like, we have to go there.
Yeah. But just what you said, I think that's such a profound shift in mindset for people, because I think once you make that shift, like, you shift out of being a victim, like these people, and I used to be like this, that you're like, oh my God, why are all these things happening to me? Like, life is happening to you. And when you actually realize that you are co-creating everything in your reality, it just completely shifts your whole worldview, because you then realize that things aren't happening to you, they're happening for you. Now, in saying that, yes, some things can happen that are out of your control, but on some level, there is, I believe, on some level, there's an agreement there. So whether it's like your soul contract when you came in, or, just something unconscious that you're just not consciously aware of that you're bringing in. And so I love that you guys do fully embody that with everything that you do, including your business, because, we try and do the same thing with natural art form. Like, Isaac's always looking at ways of doing things, bringing in more of the metaphysical, like you've done, playing certain frequencies over the, the product when he's making it.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we'll talk about that in just a second. I was interested in I don't know if I've ever asked you this before. Have you looked into the astrocartography for either one of you and Myoko, and then also here?
Yeah.
I have astrocartography sitting on my thing, like as an open thing right now on my phone, literally right now, as of like 2 days ago. But I've never came across my vision 2 days ago or something, and so I have it, and I'm like, oh, I got to look into this, but I haven't looked into it yet. But yeah,
this will be a fun thing, and the listeners
can say that because it is something we've done past life regression or past life hypnosis, and we have had both together a past life in Myoko, which is why we think and we know that we found ourselves there. And like you said, Alexa, you said like you've never had this like desire or knowledge to really go to Japan. It's just like, something you haven't really thought of. Both of us were the same. It was exactly the same for us. It wasn't somewhere ever in my life that I was like, oh, I need to go to Japan and I felt this pull or anything. It was like random occurrence. Like for me, it was working in hospitality that brought me there and enjoying snowboarding. And for Kate, it was enjoying snowboarding. And that was even just to Japan. It's like, okay, now that you're in Japan, let's get you to Myoko. And it was like then more random occurrences brought us into Myoko, and just really, really random occurrence. That
we actually found out that the house we bought there is on the exact plot of land that we farmed in the 1200s.
In 1270.
No way. Really bringing it back home. I love that.
That's amazing. Well, and that just goes to show, I mean, you just said random occurrence, but nothing's random. Like that was it's so meant to be.
So synchronistic that's why it happened. But to the it's like, well, this is really random, but I found myself here. But ultimately, it's divine, and that's what it all is.
Yeah, I find that's a good sign of living in your dharma. That's something I've.
I agree.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And actually, sorry, because before we get into how you make the products. So of all the things that you were making at the time, all these natural products, what kind of landed you on tallow and sort of moving ahead with that with Myoko Embodied?
Yeah, well, it's actually funny because the first 2 years in Japan were actually both vegan as well. So to be making tallow products 2 years later.
Went through that whole thing.
Yeah.
At least you tried it,
tried
it. We started eating meat again. We, very balanced and came full circle with that. And our butcher just ended up giving us like these little 10 centimeter cubes of tallow just as a gift because we would go to him to buy meat. So one day he gave us some. He's like, oh, eat this with soy sauce, just straight with soy sauce.
Ooh.
We had no idea what it was because we're speaking in broken English and broken Japanese. But he called it gyushi. And so later we went and looked that up and we realized it's tallow and we're like, oh, we've never heard of this before. And so we started looking into it. We started cooking with it. And then we discovered that it was used for skincare and not just skincare, but healing wounds and rashes and protecting wounds so they don't get infected because tallow is a natural preservative. So we're just so amazed by that. It was so interesting to me that was something that you use on your skin. So I was like, I'm going to make a little batch and see what it's like. And so on our little stove, I just made this tiniest amount and made some jars. And I instantly loved it. It was just so nice on the skin. And
it was delicious.
And it was delicious.
A little double purpose there.
And then we gave some to some friends and they all loved it. And some of them came back, my eczema is completely gone. Just these crazy stories. But we didn't know what was going to happen. They would come back to us and just tell us these results and we were just blown away. And then it's so funny because we started making the creams and then so we started going back to the butcher and asking for kilo bags of tallow. And I just thought a year ago, I was like, he probably thought we were eating all of that tallow.
He gave it to us in cubes to eat like that as cubes, just dip it in soy sauce. That was his way of doing it, Japanese culture, kind of what he liked doing. And we were like, cool, we'll try that.
Yeah.
And funny stuff. We always thought we got a bunch of friends about it as well who were there, foreigner friends, Australians and Americans and stuff who were in Myoko at the time. And we're like, you got to go get gyushi from this butcher. And so then he just gave one little bag away and then suddenly all these white guys and going to go buy kilos of tallow. And so very funny. He he probably got flooded and
he was like, why aren't they like,
what's
really
going on? But it was also very, at the time we were kind of like looking into ghee and eating ghee and cooking with ghee and cooking with a lot more butter. And we knew that because we went through that vegan route, we knew when we came out the other end, we were like, okay, if we're going to eat meat, we want to eat only organic, only the best possible quality meat. And so at that time when we started getting, so that's why we were going to this butcher, because he was a butcher and we weren't getting it from, you know, the store, and he was doing the right practices and all of these kind of things. And so it was kind of like, okay, now you're ready. Here's a bag of tallow. Like, it was like the universe handed us a bag of tallow, and so we ate it together. It was like very much that. It really seemed like that. And then all of the stories and all the things coming back to us was like, then us being guided, hey, focus on this one. Because at the time we were still doing like fluoride-free toothpaste, like charcoal toothpaste, and we were doing washing detergent, like chemical-free washing detergent, soaps at that time, maybe a few other things, like insect repellents, a few things like that, which were all chemical-free products that we were making and selling at the time. And so it felt a lot like, and Kate felt it as first, like she was like, no, I want to focus, this is the one, like this is the one we're going to focus on. And at that time it wasn't called Myoko Embodied, the brand at that time, but we did have a tallow balm under that brand, and it was called tallow magnesium cream because we put magnesium in it too. And that was what became our first, this one here, which is the ocean cream, which as you can see, that's backwards to magnesium right there, ocean magnesium. So that became our first product under, and now what created then Myoko Embodied, which is now all of our tallow creams. So
well, I love this because I remember the first time I heard about using tallow or duck fat or natural animal fats on your skin was I was getting a kick out of this chick on YouTube that she called herself the Flat Earth Nurse, and she had these killer videos. She's so funny, and she would just I'd be pissing myself laughing, but she's just ripping a new one into all these, like she'd buy these NASA books or these science books that talk about the universe and all the satellites that they put out. And she's just pointing out how, because if people don't know, like all the pictures that you get from these things are all images. They're not actually photographs. They're composite made. Like yeah. But Flat Earth Nurse Daphne Rimmel, so funny. But then she was a vegan as well. And then she realized that she was getting sicker and sicker and sicker, switched to animal products. Her completely turned around. And then she was like, put this on your face. Don't put anything else. Get rid of chapstick. Get rid of all this stuff. Even beeswax. She's like, use duck fat or tallow or something like this. And so she was making her homemade things. And I was like, that's quite a turnaround. It makes sense.
Actually, and I want to ask you guys, because I was never full vegan so I was like at one point when I was studying nutrition, actually, I was like plant-based, but I still ate seafood. I always ate seafood, but everything else, like I started no eggs, no butter, no other meats. And so I just want to hear you. I did that for about a year, maybe a little bit longer. Same sort of thing. Nothing major, but I just kind of wasn't like, felt good, for a period after first changing my diet. And then after like a period of time, just had these other issues coming up. Same thing. I just went back to animal products, felt way better. What was your experience with being vegan?
Pretty much the same. We felt really good for like 6 months, maybe max. Felt really good, like it was a huge detox. But also at that time, we got rid of all processed foods too. So I feel looking back, that was a huge part as well. But then, after that, like 6 months, it just started going gradually down. Like lost so much weight. Both of us were so thin.
I lost all my muscle completely.
Yeah,
I couldn't do a push-up. I could probably do one push-up. And I felt it dramatically, and we knew that something was wrong. The same as what you described about Flat Earth Nurse, Isaac, is exactly the experience we had. So it was, we were vegan for 2 years, and then we were like veggie for a year before that. So it was like 3 years of no meat, basically. But in the veggie period, we were eating feta cheese or cheese in general, lots of cheese. Yeah. And I think I never really drank much milk at that time, but we were still eating cheese and a few other things. And then we kind of went full vegan for 2 years. And Yeah, that was at the same time as like quitting the alcohol and all this kind of stuff as well. So it's like, of course we're going to feel great. Like we quit alcohol and we're stopping poisoning ourselves in so many ways. And so many life changes that we were making that were different, you know. Quitting alcohol also means that you're usually not having late nights out. You're sleeping a lot better. You're doing so many things a lot better. We're focusing more on ourselves. We're focusing more on getting sunlight in, you know, the daytime and being in nature.
That's why it made it so hard to like admit to ourselves that actually then we started going downhill because we're like, we're doing everything right. Like what's going on?
And for everyone listening that's vegan right now, thinking they didn't do it right, we spent every single meal, we cooked every single meal our own. All of our food was organic. We spent $600 a month on supplements, which were not supplements. They were like Symbiotica supplements, for anyone who knows Symbiotica, by Shervin, which we don't use anymore, but we did back then, which were very like bioavailable and all that, very organic and all this stuff, B12 and all the things that people tell you need when you're vegan. So we were doing all of it, and we were still losing all our muscle, all our energy, and we got to that point where we were like, something's wrong and something needs to change. This is not normal. I had my beard. There's photos of me with this big patch right here of completely bald in my beard. I lost so much hair. I lost like huge, like very noticeable. I didn't want to be in any photos because it was so apparent. And that's actually when I started growing my beard, because like longer, it was always a little bit of a beard, but I started growing it longer because I was so embarrassed about this big patch in my beard. I was like, I need to grow over this bald patch.
He had a beard comb over.
Literally, bro. That was it. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to do a Trump beard.
I feel you. Yeah. Trump beard.
Well, I love that you guys are sharing, because I think it is so important. There's so many more people coming out now that were vegan, got really unwell. A lot of, especially women, like where it was affecting their hormones, where they couldn't have kids, or it was affecting their periods or whatever. Because that is a big one, is the hormonal health when you're full vegan. And I think it's actually so important for people that have been on both sides to share their stories, because it's not like we're just like, oh, vegans and that's shit and like you shouldn't do that. It's like, no, we've actually like been on the other side of it and it didn't benefit us. And yeah, I think then when you learn, and again, this is just another, this is the latest agenda for people to push people into something that's completely unnatural to us, you know? And I think, look, it's so nuanced, right? Because I'm sure for a small subset of the population, that works really well for them. But the amount of people that we personally know that have been vegan for a really long period of time, so many health issues, so many gut issues, and it's like, and you know, we can see it, but unfortunately for a lot of people, they either aren't willing to look at it, or it's because it's more of an ideal now. It's like this idealistic, it's this idealistic thing.
I think it also becomes very much a cognitive dissonance thing, which I think we experienced quite massively. Where we thought we were doing the right thing. We thought this is the way, you know, this is the healthiest way. This is the way that they tell you, you know, all these things are bad. Ultimately, we realized that, you know, this is going back years ago. So now we realize death is a part of life and everything dies. So actually, ultimately, what a lot of people hold on to is like, you're killing animals. But that's a whole other story, and we can get into that. And I reckon I can defeat anyone in a battle with that, in terms of... that's a whole other ballgame, but ultimately it's a part of life. There is nothing in this earth that isn't going to die.
Well, you do the same thing. We do the same thing with vegetables. When you cut a vegetable, you're cutting it off from its life source as well.
Has a spirit, has a soul, and will therefore die and pass on, and then come back around. It's the same thing. Exactly right. Spot on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And for anyone that's lived in cold climates, we know, but if you don't, if you live in Australia, like we're here, it's warm and there's just fruit falling off of every tree you walk past. You can eat everything. You don't have that in cold climates with the winter and all that stuff. It's absolutely critical. Either save up 1 billion potatoes to have for your winter meals, or you're going to have to do some other, it's basically calorie sequestration. It's the calories from all the green and stuff during the summer months are preserved in the animals' bodies, and they carry that energy with them forward. And there is a way to do that, to harvest these animals and do it with honor and dignity and respect and gratitude, and it's beautiful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. 1,000%.
And I think that's the biggest problem too, because, you know, like you said, and this is what happens for a lot of people when they go vegan, they cut out processed foods. They, you know, maybe might start buying organic. So they change other things that are going to have a positive benefit on their health, a positive effect on their health rather. And so initially they'll feel really good, but it's so restrictive. The diet is then so restrictive that, of course, like when, you know, vegans know this, in a vegan diet, you can't get vitamin B12. Now, vitamins is a whole other rabbit hole, which we're not going to go down now because, as you and I both know, as we all know,
they may or may not exist.
But there
Talk
is
amongst
some,
yourselves. No.
but there is some nutrient in animal products that you can't get, or some nutrients, because it's actually multiple, that you can't get in plant proteins and plant products, plant foods. So it becomes so restrictive, but then it's also like it's so nuanced, because it's also like the meat that they were eating before they went vegan, if it's not organic, it's pumped full of hormones, pumped full of antibiotics and medications and vaccines and God knows what else. So when you're cutting that out, of course it's going to have a positive effect on your health, but it's the long-term effects. And then it's like, really, we're looking at the wrong thing. We actually need to be looking at, well, what's the quality of the meat that we're eating? What's the quality of the eggs? Where are we getting our eggs from? You know, can we, not everyone can do it, but can we do that? Can we get chickens? there are always things to like combat these issues, but unfortunately so many people don't want to take that responsibility, and they just choose, oh, well, but vegan, that's the way, you know, that's the way forward. And, you know, and then I could talk forever on this, because obviously with my nutrition background and having had the experience myself, but then you've got, you know, now that it is kind of an agenda, you've got every fake meat under the sun, which those things are so bad for you. And, you know, you can be vegan and really eat a really shitty diet, like nowadays. Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I feel like that kind of leads us into, because I had a thought when you're talking about that, about the things that meat has or animals have. It's a vibrational thing.
I was just about to mention that too.
Yeah, it gets into the metaphysics of it. And I don't know, do you want to go into, I don't know what you have to offer as far as the metaphysics of tallow and specifically, but let's get into that and how you guys make it.
Yeah, just when Alexa mentioned about, getting the quality of the meat, and to me, it just that exactly what you said, Isaac, just popped into my mind about, if you're buying meat at Woolies, it's factory farmed meat. These animals are having an absolutely horrendous life, and that's affecting their entire energy field, and that's affecting ultimately the meat, because there's disease in there. There's so many terrible things that are
just stress. Just the stress as well.
No love.
Yeah.
No love.
Yeah.
And so, I think this is how far away from kind of normality we've strayed not we, but society as a whole, I think, in terms of what's right and what's, what the way we should be doing things. And of course we came to the conclusion that veganism was better because of the way things were going, the way things were, like factory farming and like mass production of cows that never see sunlight in their lives. They're stuck in a farm and they can't move. They're fed full of grains that are GMO and soy and all of these terrible things. And they're fattened to the point of how much they're selling them per kilo, right? So as much kilo as they can on there, then they're getting more money. So this is like, of course we came to that conclusion. Hang on, this is wrong. Something needs to change. And so society had this thing where it was like, oh, maybe veganism is better. And that was ultimately the natural path of the way people's kind of attention went. And they were right in terms of like, we need to change something. And probably the veganism maybe last 10 years or so did have a good effect on the way people see things, because I think it did then, even like those who came out of it and like ourselves and yourselves and so many others, like seeing ultimately that we didn't need to go back. We didn't want to go back to that. We wanted to go back to healthy meat, animals that receive love and are farmed naturally. They're living on land that's, they're touching the ground all the time. They're getting love from their, carers. They're getting sunlight all the time. They're eating grass only. They're getting, they're organic beings just like us, just like humans are. And I think that has not just a little effect, as some people might think. It has ultimately all of the effect. That is the ultimate thing. I think me and Kate were talking the other day about subtle energy, and how subtle energy is the most powerful of energies, because I think we talked about this actually the other day as well, potentially, about obvious and big energy. Sure, you can notice something and you're like, that's not for me, I'm going this way. But subtle energy, in terms of the tiniest little things that are just spread out and they're constant and they're constantly happening, that's how we have arrived in the day and age that we have arrived. In terms of, I mean, we're going in a great new direction now, but I think up to 2019, that's how we arrived there, because of subtle energy and how little things just keep chipping away. Subtle energy just is so much more effective, and I think that is super relevant in terms of...
And so I think with that knowledge, we've put that into all aspects of our business. The metaphysical is such a strong pull for us, and starting the business here in Australia under Myoko Embodied, it wasn't enough to just create a physical product for me. I was so passionate in the energy and the metaphysical side of everything that I was like, it has to be more. It has to be more of a conscious brand. It has to be implementing all this stuff we know into the products, which has led to so many different layers of our business. And in terms of the metaphysical in tallow, it's where we're sourcing the tallow from is farms that they raise with love, and it's the full cycle of life, and they return to the earth to give back that energy into the products and as meat as well. But that makes a huge difference in the quality of the tallow and how nutrient dense it even is. Everything's just such a big difference when you're getting it from farms that are practicing literally the best way to say it is just with love, but it's grass-fed and finished, and they've got open grass, they've got
organic, biodynamic, all those labels that we give it, but it's ultimately that. Farmed with love is the ultimate way. Yeah. And I think that then, as Kate mentioned, that led to so many things. At that time when we were creating all of this, we had recently come across Beta Austin, who all of us went to see a few weeks ago, last week, and amazing things that she was doing with water and the energy that water holds. And we had come across that, and we really wanted to use that knowledge with our products and really bring that to people, whether they know it or not. We're, like you mentioned as well, Isaac, earlier, about putting frequencies into as we make the products. We also do. How would you describe it? I guess you want to describe. So we always have affirmations on all of our products, so that whoever's using them is really connecting their mind and their body and their spirit at the same time. But also we fuse the products as we are making them with those affirmations. And that might sound like a crazy topic to those who are not really in the know, but go look up Beta Austin stuff and you'll see that it's absolutely that, where the water in anything will take on the energy of the influence from external of it. So we always will write, for example, ocean, as we used as an example before, we use the affirmation because that product is designed around the ocean and the water element. Calm, relax. I am calm, I am relaxed, I am abundant. Just like water, that is exactly what it is. We infuse all of the whole time we're making that product, we infuse that product with those 3 affirmations, which the word calm, relaxed, and abundant, those 3 words are on all of the process of making that product at all times. And so
how does that look like? Does that, do you have it on the pot, or do you have that just on the wall around where you're making it, or?
A few different ways. So we use Glad wrap over the bowls as it's setting and stuff. So we just literally write it on top, and it's so cool because you'll see as you're writing it reflecting down into the tallow and the oils. So you can literally see it.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's cool.
We'll put it basically in as many locations as we can while the process is liquid and while it's setting. And as it's setting, it's in a basically like a pot or a jar or whatever you want to call it, with those affirmations on it as well. So just as many times as we can, really infusing the products with those affirmations.
I love that. And even just the intention, like even if you guys didn't physically write it down or whatever, even if you were to just to say it or think it and have that intention while you're making the product makes such a huge difference, because I actually, I mean, not that we were doing this purposely, but a little experiment, I guess, that I sort of, or like something I noticed was when Isaac first moved out here, he had to like source all of the ingredients for the products again, like from scratch. He's in a different country. We didn't know what we could get. Everything was like a lot more expensive here. So there was a lot of stress around making the product. And then when he first started making it, because he was using slightly different ingredients, like same ingredients, but from different companies and things, it took him ages to get the consistency right. And it was very stressful. And initially when we first started selling the product here, it felt like we were just kind of like pushing shit uphill. It was very difficult. And then once he kind of got back into his groove again and started, he'd play like 528 hertz frequency or whatever, like over the, like while he was mixing or whatever. And again, just coming back to that, because when Isaac's in the kitchen making products, like I feel like he's in his zone, and I kind of leave him to do his thing, and he does everything with such care and such love that's when we just started, like everything we'd sell, oh my God, this is amazing, this is working, I've never tried anything like that, and we just started getting like this really amazing feedback constantly, and of course sales picked up and all of this. So it's such a great example of how intention is so important, because whatever you're putting out is what you're going to get back. And I think you guys definitely have experienced that too in the way that you make the product. And also, which I'd love to touch on, in your relationship, and because obviously, we can relate to this where you guys are in a romantic relationship, but you also have a business relationship and you work together. And sometimes, they bleed into each other because, sometimes you're having an argument about something personal, but you got to go to work or you got to do something work-based, and it's like causes some tension, and that can also affect the business and also what's coming in. So how do you guys find that, again, doing everything so consciously? If you're happy to share a little bit about like, your working relationship and then how that affects the business and how everything sort of gets reflected back to you.
Yeah, well, I was just about to say, like, your business is the biggest mirror of yourself, and then your partner is also the biggest mirror of yourself. So, like, doing it all together, it's like, if you want to grow, do that. Like, find out about you. You see it so instantaneously directed back at you. Yeah. Like, we have so many stories and experiences of us fighting, and then all of our sales would drop off, and, like, nothing's coming in. We're like getting more frustrated because we're like, oh, we're not even like making sales right now, and we're annoyed at each other. And then as soon as we make up and we both feel the resolution and it goes, they'll just come in instantly, like on the second.
The energy changes, and literally it's like, and because we talk about this all the time and we're actively aware of it, and we're aware of the way that energy changes, and life is a reflection of that, and that we create our reality. So we're not just like, what a coincidence, we've got an order, where we realize that the way that we create a wall for ourselves and create a blockage on something, if we're fighting or if something's going on or if like we're in a disagreement about something, then we're putting up a wall, and we're putting up an energetic wall, basically. And so as soon as we can break that wall down, we break it down, and as Kate said, it's to the second, we'll like, it's mind-blowing once you start kind of noticing it. It's quite mind-blowing. And it literally happens regularly, like that. Not that we're fighting regularly or anything, but like it's regularly that we'll notice these kind of things. Like it's not just in negative situations as well. It's also positive situations where we're like, things are flowing, we're going for it, where we've just made some really good decisions, and then bang, we get it, like, and it flows. It's the energy higher, heightened, and more attractive, and so everything's flowing again. Things flow, and so it's quite amazing in terms of that. And
a big thing we've learned is rest. Rest is in there with flow, and when we don't rest, that's another one.
A thing we're learning right now, very much so. Like for example, December and January, we were really going hard. We had just moved up here and opened the shop, and just had our first employee and our second employee. So there was so many new things that meant we had to work so much harder. And so we were just going for it. All of our time was spent working on the business. And so that's also building a wall. If all of our time is spent working on the business, there's no time to rest and recover from what we're doing. There's no time to regain energy and refocus energy. It's building another wall. And so we noticed that as well. And so then we started resting a little bit better, in just little format at first, just a few hours in the day here and there. And then and now that you guys know where we were talking about this before, we're in a cyclone now,
quite unquote.
And it's actually quite sunny outside right now, but
it's very sunny.
Yeah, suspicious, isn't it? We're in a storm right now, and so ultimately, internet isn't good. We all the shops here are closed, so we're not opening the shop. It's kind of here, have time to rest. The universe offers these things to us, but we don't recognize them. Not we. Society doesn't often recognize them as that. They recognize them as panic, fear, and let's lock ourselves inside, everything down. Ultimately, we're kind of this is an opportunity to rest. And so we're taking that opportunity. And so we always notice in those scenarios too, where it's just, you let things flow again. Love flows in very quickly. Happiness flows in very quickly. Joy flows in very quickly. And as soon as those things flow in, you can then use a little bit of those to then put back into the business and really help the business grow as well with love, joy, and freedom and passion, rather than just out of stress and necessity. So I think stress and necessity are the worst things to grow a business in, basically.
Absolutely.
Also, going from the age of Pisces to Aquarius, that just everything's so much more energetic now, and you can't just do A, B, and C to get these results. It's just so much to you, your home, your friendships, everything in your inner circle, which again goes back to Myoko Embodied, you're the center. And it affects everything directly outside of you. So, just finding all the things that trigger you, what's going to come up for you that's going to then affect the business, and just working through all of that, you've got that direct mirror. So it's the perfect tool to grow personally as well. And when you grow, your business takes the next step as well, and you grow with that as well. So, it's been really cool, to be honest, to have that.
Huge thing. I think on that, I just want to pull on that a little bit more, which is because it's really interesting, because we talk about this a lot as well, about I'd been in business previously a few times and started a few businesses and have run several businesses for other people over my kind of 20s and early 30s. And it was what Kate said. It was do A, B, and C, and you got to focus on this, and then you got to focus on that, and you got to make sure you're doing this. And very physical and very Pisces, very external and dualistic.
And very yang. It's very much that yang. Yeah.
Very yang energy. And so we've noticed very dramatically that that's not the way anymore. And you see it happening left, right, and center, that all these businesses that were super successful in that old paradigm are going out of business now. And, it's all over. I mean, I don't know if I don't really watch or read the news, but I know it's all over the news, Before last year, about a year ago, I was working I did 6 months where I was working for this very large hospitality company, very fine dining, very premium hospitality business. And I was a general manager for them, and I had 60 staff under me, and it was very that energy. I wore a suit every day, and that's not me at all. But I
can't even imagine you in a suit now, Jimmy.
I can't imagine it. I just did it for that time, for the experience. And even during the time, I couldn't imagine me in a suit every day, but it was still happening. And it was very interesting. It was just a really interesting 6 months. And funnily enough, at the start of that 6 months, I said, I'm only going to do this for 6 months. And to the day, 6 months to the day, that business, the entire business folded, closed down 6 months to the day. So I said, do it. It was very good money. So we had just come back from Japan, and we kind of were trying to restart this business up, and a lot of things, we were trying to find our place again after living overseas for many years, and being in that post-COVID time, basically. And so, I did that for 6 months, and said at the beginning, I was like, this is not me. I don't want to do it, but I'll do it for 6 months. I'll give them 6 months and then I'll move on. And 6 months to the day, the business, on my birthday, March 31, the company announced we've gone into administration. So the entire business is, hundreds of employees. On my birthday, 6 months to the day, March 31 last year.
I love that you... Yeah, and I love that you share that, Jimmy. And I just love that we're talking about like the energetics because I literally just wrote down, I wanted to ask you about your previous business and the difference between that. And you literally went into it. So we're already communicating telepathically. I love it. And I love that you shared that because, it's something that we often talk about too, that the old paradigm, it's just not like people that are trying to move forward under that old paradigm, it's just not working anymore. And I think you can also notice a difference, like for you, especially Jimmy, because you've had other businesses before and now this is very different for you because of the way that you guys operate. And I think for us, it's the same thing where the intention is so much more important. Like if we were just doing this for money, we wouldn't be growing, it wouldn't be working. And for me personally, I've never really been driven by money. And it is really bringing into balance. Yes, there is the necessity of, well, in this day and age, we need money to live. We need money to put a roof over our head and put food on the table and all of that. However, I think, again, when you understand that we are energetic beings, we're here having a human experience and we are always provided for, and you do, believe that we are living in abundance, then everything is provided for. And it's not that, what you said, the stress and necessity, which unfortunately so many people go into business with that. And especially for men, I think that's much more common for men because they want to provide and protect. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree 100%. It was literally that business was the result of that whole collapse, which was that hospitality business that I was telling you about, the company, and they were $25 million in debt. Like that's how far it's big. That's how big of a business it was, first of all, that they were dealing with that kind of money, big money. And it was so interesting to see. It was like a setup. It was like, hey, this is the way things were. For myself, that's the way I perceived it. It was like, this is the way things were, and they're not going to work that way anymore. And then it collapsed, and now here we are doing our business in a very, very different way, and a way that resonates with us and is true to us, and is not that paradigm. And all of the things that they were successful before. You can't be in $25 million of debt unless you previously have been quite successful in the business that you're doing. And so they were very successful as a company, and that's how they got to that level of so many venues and such large venues and so many staff and building to this point where banks would just give them money to do these things. But the paradigm of that it's not that anymore. That's not the way it is anymore. And that's why there's so many of these businesses, because there's so much talk about economic collapse and all this stuff. And it's like, well, it's just the old paradigm that's collapsing and the new paradigm that's, I don't even want to say being born, because I think it's already been born. It's already born. We're already in it. And it's just all falling away now. Whereas the new is already here. And I think it's been here since 2020, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, that's what's come of COVID. I think we've all known, like Isaac started the business as a result of wanting to do something different and not working for the man, during that time. Is that what year did you start?
No. So I started handyman business out of stress and necessity.
Okay.
But it was it's very successful for a handyman business, like a one-man show. In 1 year, it just got really big. I up-leveled my skills constantly, bought tools and equipment, all this stuff, but again, was overloaded with debt. And that's what I think is a commonality between what you described and what I was going through. I was going in the wrong direction, and it might be something about that energetically. The debt model might be crumbling and going away. I feel like it's definitely going away. Like the debt model itself is literally like the dollar is on the verge of collapse. And that's not a scary thing, because value doesn't collapse. Value just shifts. Opinions about values shift. So something will just take its place, whether it's gold and silver. A lot of people think Bitcoin and stuff like that will, but I'm looking for more stability, not something that's constantly like, oh, we just gained 60 million, points, and now we just lost 40 million points. Like stability, not going into debt. Yeah,
because it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been something energetically, like you said, Kate. The business is a reflection of you. It's massive truth drop, because that's so true. There's so many things that I'm having to let go of because I'm still very much, not still, but I was very much in that old model. Still a little bit learning to let go, and sometimes it's painful. But the universe literally was like, you have an issue with debt. You keep trying to go back and take the easy route and go that way. Now we're going to rip that from you, and you're going to do this without any of that. No training wheels, just, grow.
Yeah.
So the universe does get to push you a little bit. Yeah.
And I think when it's your own product, you're so vulnerable about it. And so when the more like you're self-conscious or like just nervous to get it out there and stuff, you'll be confronted with people that are saying the most rogue shit about your products. Like they will hit you hard with things you never wanted to hear for the purpose of you getting stronger, growing your confidence, and being proud of your products.
Yeah.
Like no matter what the outside world's like thinks. So all your insecurities will come out like through your customers, through your sales, and it will just reflect your exact fears and desires. And it really like allows you to where you should be going, how you should be growing.
It's that mirror so you can overcome it, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's the mirror.
Yeah.
It's right.
It's so true.
You overcome, and then you got to overcome it to get to that next level.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that because I've heard this a lot within like the I don't know what to even call it, because it's like the common law community, the lawful it's not, I mean, I guess it's common law, but that kind of world, they often say it's a spiritual experience, because when you go through that process and learning how to conduct yourself in court, how to present yourself and how to write notices and all these things, it really comes back to knowing who you are. You can't do that. A piece of paper is a piece of paper. If you don't know who you are, it won't work. Those lawful processes won't work. But now I feel like, because I've never really owned my own business. I come from quite an entrepreneurial family. I wouldn't call them entrepreneurs, but, very much like the Wogs, they came out here from their countries. They just started working. A lot of them started their own businesses. They own shops, and my parents did the same thing. And so for me, it's very normal. Whereas for Isaac, he's the first person in his family to start his own business. Like at all. So, and now that since coming onto natural art form, this for me was one of the first things where, I feel that vulnerability, like you mentioned, Kate, where it's like, Isaac makes the products, but, being part of the day-to-day and growing it and doing the markets and whatever you do, it's very different to just going to a job and getting paid and being like, well, if they don't like the products, I don't care. I don't make them. Like it's so different to that. And, I feel like it is a spiritual experience, because you do have to grow through so much stuff, because you are going to get confronted with that stuff. But ultimately, I think it's been one of our greatest tools, as well as I would say the number one greatest tool is our relationship. I think you guys can probably agree with that, because your partner is always a mirror of you. So there's lots of growth that happens there. But then, I think that it's a double whammy when you're then working together and running a business together. It has been a huge, huge tool of growth for us, but that's how we perceive it, because again, people can be like, well, this is always happening. It's so shit, so hard. And, they don't see it as a reflection of themselves. I love that you guys, and I think we've bonded, that's why we've claimed you as our business besties, because we connect on so many levels, because being in a partnership and then coming together and actually starting a business and working together, it can be a lot, but then I also think it can be a really, really beautiful thing to experience together.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for some people, it can be really daunting. And that sounds like, oh, I don't want to, people, I don't know, it's like, we love the change. We love the growth. We run towards it.
Yeah.
You guys opened up to a new opportunity to take what you'd learned in Myoko and then coming back here, and then you just open up to this possibility of growth. It wasn't like, if someone's like pushing you into it, or you're trying to, I don't know, then that's when relationships fall apart. That's when the business falls apart. But because you're leaning into it, I don't know if everybody's built that way, but we definitely are.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, Jimmy's fire and I'm air. So we're very, like, just dynamic. We're happy to move. We're happy to, since we've met, we've moved houses like 16 times.
Oh, wow.
Like, it takes us, like, we're happy to go and experience. Both of us kind of don't have strong roots to any place, or we're just, very happy to just go with where we're getting pushed by the universe, see what happens and see what we're presented with, because kind of we just got this view of nothing's a loss.
Yeah.
You're not going to have that big of regrets. Like, wherever we're going, we know it's what we're just experiencing at this time.
It's all good. What's next? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
We always feel like we're kind of like, as you guys know, we just moved here to open our shop, and which is Yamba, and we had never been to Yamba before. We just kind of like, we'll get to a place and like, okay, what's next? And then we'll, it feels like we kind of complete that task. We got the shop open, and now we're kind of like, all right, what's next? Like, we're kind of looking for the next thing, And it always presents itself because we're open to it. We're not really, like you said, Isaac, we're not really afraid of that next step, which is going to be the next challenge. Which for us, probably moving into a small warehouse of some kind or something like, for the business, that is not. But that would be a challenge in itself for us personally as well. Moving the business into a warehouse, something we've never done before. I've never had anything to do with a warehouse. I worked one day in a warehouse when I was like 17 or 18 years old, and I was like, get me out of here. I worked one day box. It was a lighting company, and they made me a massive box of lights and separate that massive box of lights into 3 smaller boxes. I did that for 8 hours of the day, and I was like, no way, I ain't coming back tomorrow. Get paid. I'm never doing this again. But so that's my warehouse experience.
And it's interesting to say that, like, how we would make our warehouse nice.
Yeah.
Not be just
like not that.
Like, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it. Yeah. With the way that you designed that place and both your energies, like, your warehouse is going to be the best looking.
Oh yeah, we're just going to come and hang out at the warehouse.
Hangout space. Yeah, that's what we want to make. That's what we want to do with our whole business. Like, everywhere that we have it and wherever it ends up and wherever it evolves into, we just want to have it awesome. Whether, like, we loved doing this and building this because, for example, like, this was all of this, what we use here in making all of these archways is the idea behind this came from when we renovated our house in Japan in Myoko, which was we used an organic plaster called shikui, which is amazing. It's like going back to old organic building materials, and that's what we want to do ultimately always. If we move into a warehouse, build a space with organic materials, and we're going to make it really cool and something that represents the business and represents our philosophy behind life and the business, and just something that we want to be involved in, like really cool organic materials and organic building, and that's ultimately why. I mean, as you can see, all of our product names, they're all designed around nature, and they're all designed around the elements, and so that's like a huge thing for us is keeping it real life.
Yeah. And it embeds a certain energy into even the building materials that you use. They hold energy. And I had this thought when I was building this big timber frame greenhouse, doing the mortise and tenon joints, with the chisel and the mallet and putting the oak pegs in. And I spent so many hours doing this. It was like almost a whole year. And, putting up 3 trusses and the roof and all that. But I was thinking about all these buildings in Wyoming out in the country. Sometimes my dad loves to take pictures of these old barns that are just dilapidated and falling apart. When there's nothing living in it, or maybe nothing big, like no horses, like birds and raccoons don't count, but horses or humans in the building. Obviously, if you're living in it, you're going to be looking after it and taking care of it and putting your energy into it that way. But I think there's almost something more spiritual about it too, that when there's that life in the building itself will stand longer. as soon as that life leaves it, then the building just immediately starts to come in and collapse in on itself.
Yeah, so true. You see that a lot in Japan.
All right, so we just got cut off a little.
If this looks a little disjointed, it's because we got cut out. Thanks to the hurricane.
But I actually just wanted to say on the elements, because you guys are fire and air, and Isaac and I are earth and water. So it does provide a really nice, it provides a really nice balance. But then I know the four of us, we're so perfectly aligned.
I know, it's like Captain Planet. We've got the rings and we're going to
Guys, I actually loved Captain Planet. I still remember the song, Captain Planet, he's a hero.
I remember that epic flat top haircut that he had.
Well, it's interesting though, the programming in that, because the song was gonna take pollution down to zero. Like they've been programming us since we were babies, literally. Yeah. So
where do you want to jump in?
I was just in the middle of saying it took us like a few months of being in this house to even feel our own energy in here. Like it was this house had sat empty for 2 years before we got in here. And so it was super like eerie. It had like such strange energy to it.
Very dense.
And it took a long time for it to feel like it was our energy and was like conscious with us. Like it was very noticeable to see that shift from like the previous energy to like our energy and working with us in the end.
We did a lot of
that makes sense. I was just going to say that. Like, did you guys move any spirits out? Because I have a friend that he can sometimes see these entities and stuff, like actual like demonic things, and he says they love to be in empty buildings, or they just naturally gravitate towards them. Yeah. Anywhere it's darker, can't live in the light. So I had this. This is funny. I didn't even tell Kate this, but I had this. You guys know. So I quit coffee a couple of weeks ago, and I was having really bad sciatic nerve pain, and a friend had given me a little bit of a like edible weed thing, which I never do, but I was like in a lot of pain, so I was like, maybe this will help the pain. And I laid in bed and just kind of rested and tried to like let that help me with the pain. So I did that, and I was just kind of like laying in bed in the dark, and the sciatic pain was like really painful. And I had this like very like trippy experience where I was laying in bed with the fan on and my eyes were closed. I was just listening to a podcast, and the energy around me just started feeling really, really thick and dense. And I was like, and as Kate mentioned, like this is quite an old house, like probably like very old, like probably close to 80 to 100 years maybe. And we've renovated all of this and put all of this in, but so anyway, I was in bed and I just had this like, it's like I had this like bit more spiritual connection because of that edible, and just this real dense energy. I didn't tell you about this because I don't want to scare Kate, but it was just this thickness that was like, and it was like wrapping over me in bed, and our bedroom is the darkest room of the house. And so it was really thick and really dense, but it wasn't scary. It wasn't like I was like, oh, there's an entity in the room, I'm quite fearful. I was just aware of this presence. And it was very much like maybe it just needed recognizing or something. Maybe me recognizing it both helped me and helped it. And when I say it, or like, I don't know if it was like an entity or what it was, but it was like very apparent. And it was like really there. I could really feel it there, and very much on top of me and going over me like this, and like, but just there, like a little bit away from me, like just, but then also the rest of the room, like the whole room except like maybe a few inches from my body, but wrapping around everywhere that it could almost. And just reminded me of that when you mentioned about clearing energy from a house, and like especially an old house like this, and the materials you use and all of these kind of things are so prevalent on
what you can create and what gets captured in a house, and like dark areas of a house, and even like as far as corners go, like dark corners in the room, you know, it's not really a natural way to create dark corners that all gather dust and gather energy. And even as far as dust being like the manifestation of, you know, stagnant energy, and all of these things that I think are quite relevant. And I don't think humanity looks into this enough and realizes this enough, because we all live in the same houses that are mass produced and all have corners in them that are dark. And this is actually the exact reason why we wanted archways in here. So this exact reason we put archways on the entry to this room as well. We wanted to put more rounded energy for less stagnation, basically, which is why, exactly why we wanted to bring and in future in areas we'll be in as well, and our future houses and our potential where the business goes as well in future, as we're talking about a potential small warehouse or large warehouse even, just creating areas where it's not stagnant and there isn't the potential for stagnation and for energy and even entities, if you want to call it that, to be trapped there and kept in that area for long periods of time and create darkness and create whilst darkness is inevitable, but
right. I even think the cornicing, I've been here so long, I can't even remember what we call those in America. You know, at the top of the wall, where instead of just having a corner at the wall, it actually curves up. I always enjoyed putting those in. I put that in my daughter's room back in the States, and it just feels differently. The design people, the interior designers say it makes the room look taller, but I think it does add more verticality to it. To take a word from that I heard from our my brain is spacing on his name. Linton. Yeah, sorry. Linton said that, but I was like,
I was going to mention his episode actually, because what you're saying speaks to that. That's what we spoke about with Linton about, just like these cookie cutter homes now that are like mass. It's like anything that's mass produced. Like we talked about it with food, but it goes for everything. Like that's what I mean. When you start understanding this stuff, it applies to literally everything. And I think what was coming to mind when you said that was like even the energy of how a home is built. So there's this guy on Instagram, I have no idea what his name is, but he's a builder, and he goes around to these homes that have been built really, like they're really shoddy and they've cut corners and they're like unfinished and there's things are broken, and he literally just goes in and he shows like how things haven't been done right. And I just imagine like the energy that's gone into something like that, that's been built not with no intention whatsoever. They usually just want to make money. They don't care what they're doing. And then for the people that are moving into that, that's the energy of literally the four walls that you're living in. And I think that has a lot to say for, and again, most people wouldn't even realize this, but how it then affects their life. Or if it's built with a lot of stress, there's a lot of stress, like things are going wrong and it's taking longer and it's costing more money, that energy is literally going to be in that house. So, and it works both ways.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it works both ways. So when you're building things more consciously and you're using, better materials and reclaimed materials, using everything.
I used to do when I would renovate homes back in the States, I would write with a marker on the wall, whatever, like a blessing for the home. And I wouldn't even tell the homeowners that I was doing that. But if I was putting in a shower, for instance, before I'd put the tile on the wall, I would write a blessing on the wall, or love, or abundance, or whatever, and then I would close in the wall and do all of that.
That's
and I do that.
That's the best.
Yeah, I love putting that intention. I think it things like that, a little drop in the right direction with that good energy, I think is much more potent than the density.
Yeah, all cultures do stuff like that. Like even in Japan, they have like I don't know what we'd call it, but in the roof spaces where it's just like a skeleton, so it's just completely like black and there's nothing in there, they put like shrines and stuff in there and like those kind of kite things to
bless the house,
but also to keep away darkness as well. So it's like it's all throughout all cultures. Like today, which I think we're a bit disconnected from, but it goes back so like.
And it was very normal in Japan. Very normal. Every house has that in Japan. It's not a woo-woo way of thinking like people might think it is in Western culture like now. And I think it's all through Eastern culture. All of those talk of spirits and entities is very, very normal, and I think it's maybe coming into the more modern Eastern culture. People are aware of the talk about it, but aren't necessarily as connected with that talk about it, just because of that direction of the way the world has been going. But I think it's still there, and even like in Indonesia and these kind of countries, they'll always have offerings to spirits because it's known there. It's not like a thing that might be happening. It's just known as fact in those areas, which is very interesting and has been for thousands of years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's another thing in the Western world. They, portray it as like, oh, that's just woo woo. And, they put it in horror stories and make people fearful of it and all of that. So much programming that goes on around that. But it is a fact of life. Like it is part of our life. We are spirit. So to believe that there can't be spirits disembodied is it's definitely a trap where they're trying to steer people away from that.
Well, Japanese horror movies are they're just renowned for being some really next level shit. We used to watch some of those like Ringu and what was it, Ju-on and Ringu. And I think for me, like if I ever come into contact with any of that, I'm just going to start putting a little picture of Donald Trump up in the ceiling cavity. And that'll be my blessing in the guard for the whole.
Well, just on that too, because we've talked about this quite a lot recently, actually, is that it's really interesting when you look at horror movies. A lot of it is based around making people fearful of not just spirits in general, because yes, there are demonic entities and there are dark spirits, but we are more powerful than them. Like we should never be scared of them. It's actually very simple to just tell them to go. Like you have authority over your body and over your whole field, and it's very easy to have them leave you. But a lot of it is based around this fear of nature. Like so many horror movies are, they get lost in the woods, they're stuck in the woods and they're in nature. And honestly, I can't think of anything more not fearful, like such a not like, and, like snakes on a plane, like always animals and spider sharks, Jaws. And it's always like these things about nature. And it's only in the last sort of few years I've really noticed especially since I moved out of Sydney and then I go back, and the way that people talk about, like I remember some extended family not long after I moved up here, they were like, I was telling them how I live in, got a little cabin in the woods, and they're like, aren't you scared? And I was like, no, what would I be scared of? And they're like, at night and the animals and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, like I love it. And it's just very interesting. And then when you actually look at horror, especially horror movies, that's always the fear is these normal aspects of nature, that's so unnatural to be fearful of.
Like there's so many horror movies of like inside your own home. And I know for like myself, watching horror movies as a kid, it's made me like permanently scared of being home alone. And I know it's just come from like watching horror movies and like getting scared about little voices and like the dark and everything. And
Yeah. My dad was like that growing up. He didn't let us watch a lot of the movies and stuff, but he was always so worried about, he'd like make sure the blinds were always closed. There's always like, oh, what if somebody's like peeping in on you, or they could shoot you through the window? I remember thinking that growing up. I was like, and I used to do that when I was in the military when I had an apartment on base, but I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, where you literally have to worry about people shooting you through your own window. So, but most places you don't have that risk. So
actually, and this is a perfect segue. I didn't even plan this, but this is a perfect segue to talk about what's currently happening now. Like the programmed fear, like even just in responding to quote unquote natural disasters. Like they've had a cyclone predicted here since about a week ago, I guess. That's meant to hit. Well, I don't even know, because yesterday I was in town. So for people listening, we're recording this on Thursday, the 6th of March. I think this cyclone's been predicted to hit like today or tonight or something.
It's already hitting, yeah.
Yeah, so we've had I was in town yesterday, and a lot of the shops in town were sandbagging and boarding their doors up, and which is great to be prepared, because the last flood no one was prepared and it decimated the town. But there's so much fear around it, and we were just telling you off camera before we jumped on that there's a guy that my mum came across that is known for tracking weather systems and stuff, especially when they're predicting and whatever. And he debunks a lot of it because he just says it's not what they're saying it is. And he literally just put out a video saying that it's not even a cyclone based on all the weather maps, all the tracking he's done. It's just a tropical storm. But they're saying it's a cyclone. It's going to hit from here to here. And so many people have gone into that fear response again. And we've just kind of been like, first, we didn't think it was going to hit or be as bad as they're saying it's going to be, which looks like that's the case. And two, even if it hits, it's fine. We survived the floods, and that was freaking insane. And we're so programmed to act in response to these things in fear.
Yeah, we've felt the same as that for the last few days, because we're also in the cyclone route. We're only about 2 hours south of you guys, so also in that cyclone area, and it's been very windy and rainy, but we've felt the same. We've just been like, cool, we'll see what happens. What else can you do? But also at the same time, exactly what you said about the programming of fear. We think it's something where, if one can project over the mass media, this is what's going to happen to ultimate amount of people who will then create that energy out of fear, which is a very potent energy. They're going to, ultimately create worse things happening. So they, pump it out on the news, and then everyone's like, oh my God, I'm fearing. They're all living in fear. They're creating that heightened energy and therefore creating a fearful circumstance for themselves.
They give it a name. So it's
they name it.
An identity around it.
Something.
We're so powerful that collectively we can make it happen or not. And that's why anyone that messages me to make sure we're okay, I'm like, yeah, we're fine, we're prepared and everything, but also we're exactly what you said before as well, Alexa, that we're sending out thoughts that it's going to go back to the sea, fizzle out, it's not coming.
And we're all good no matter what happens. Yeah. It's no dramas.
Because we all collectively have that power to disperse it or not. And I think originally we brought it on as well for whatever reason, which Jimmy mentioned something the other day, and Veda Austin said it herself, when we cry, we're alchemizing our tears, and then it's the perfect medicine because it goes straight to your mouth and drink, which is the exact same with the world. It's rain comes up from somewhere, it's alchemized, it's emotion, it's created, and then it drops where it needs to as medicine.
Yeah. A big thing about water being conscious and aware and truly living, as we went to Veda Austin's talk the other day, as we discussed, I was just kind of thinking the other day about clouds floating above us as a gas of water floating above us, and just really having this awareness of it's conscious up there. Okay, where are we dropping? It's not always raining when you're underneath a cloud. It's where the cloud decides to drop its rain. So, it's very, and while that can be manipulated and intentionally designed to put it somewhere, because consciousness can be manipulated, as we see in reality all the time, as can, I think, water, and as can this scenario of being fearful of something that is so life-bringing, which is like water. We're sitting here fearful of, not we, but people are sitting here fearful of water coming down. And while it can be also extremely destructive, as can humans and as can all consciousness, it's not something I think that we should project fear into.
Exactly. Yeah. And looking at it as, well, everything has a gift and a shadow, as I like to say. So water can be extremely destructive, but it can also be really cleansing. Sometimes it's just necessary for that to happen. And sometimes the destruction is very necessary, because what comes after destruction, it's a rebuilding, it's a rebirth. Yeah. So the fear around it is so unnecessary. And you're right, we bring it on, even just by talking about it, because that's what they do. They're just like, we're just going to put this here. Yes, they put fear behind it, and make sure you're prepared and blah blah. And then it's been in the news every day, and that's what we've had. Lots of people that aren't even here reaching out to people here. So, and I actually find that in a lot of cases too, it's the people that aren't even in the region that's going to be affected that are the most fearful. Because they're checking on everyone, and are you okay? And
well, I've done that with friends in hurricane zones, and but sometimes it is warranted. But you don't have to have fear. It's just fear to me is a sign that you need more preparation, and that you're like, something is unexpectedly coming at you, and you're like, oh shit, what do I do? And the most important thing is to stay calm and, take some of the Myoko Ocean and just put that on the lintel over your doorway. And just the storm will pass over you.
Yeah. 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 And we do have, especially collectively, we do have the power to stop those things because, that's what we've, a friend of my mum sent a thing out to everyone that just asked people to just sit at certain times of the day. Because again, if we're doing things at the same time, lots of people, you get more of that collective energy. And literally it's just simple as just sitting. All she said in the message was just take 3 deep breaths and just sit, in a meditative state and just sit and imagine it dispersing. You can really imagine whatever you want. Like I kind of imagined it dispersing. I kind of imagined like almost like a protective bubble coming off the coast. I guess praying for protection and that, everyone's going to be okay and it's not going to be as bad as they say. And it's interesting because I said yesterday, my theory was that because they gave such a broad, they said it would hit from like Brisbane all the way down to almost like just before Grafton. So that's like Yamba, all of that part of the coast, which is quite a big area. And I said yesterday, I reckon it's going to hit wherever it's going to be worst wherever they fear it the most. And apparently this morning something got washed away in Brisbane. Now Brisbane's a major city. It's the capital city of Queensland and it's a major town centre. You're going to have a lot more mainstream people that are watching the news that are in fear. And last night, apparently that's one of the places that we hit. So it's very interesting to watch that.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, and we can affect the clouds with our consciousness. There's
we should put your video into this episode finally.
Yeah. So
I remember
that's a cool video.
Oh yeah, you guys have seen it. Explain to the listeners. I would love to put it in at the end maybe, but we'll see.
Well, so if you look at Hollywood, sometimes they'll take a truth and they'll make it ridiculous or something else. They'll take truths and they'll either use it to make a mockery of it, or they'll guide people away from it, or make it look like it doesn't exist, it's not real, or that it's too fictionalized and like that's Avengers superhero stuff. But there's a movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats, and it's basically a true story about Army Special Operations doing secret psychic experiments tied in with the whole MK Ultra program. But one of the characters is George Clooney, and he's in a car and he's looking at the clouds, and the guy with him driving is like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm cloud bursting," and nothing's happening. He's just looking at the clouds like a crazy person. But I remember hearing Dr. Bear Lando from Alpha Vedic and the AlphaCast podcast talk about him and his wife, and he's very conscious, very tapped in, and has an amazing, just endless amazing stories. And he was explaining how they looked at the clouds and they could telepathically disperse them and then gather them again. And I was like, I'm going to try this out. So one time I was in New Mexico, or it was either New Mexico or no, it was like Arizona. I was going from Wyoming to California and back driving. And there was a bunch of chemtrails, and I was camping overnight. The next day, all the like big thick clouds of spray coming from these airplanes. And I was like, I'm just going to say I don't consent to this. And I'm also going to add on top of that a command, disperse. And so I'm looking at it and I'm speaking it. And then I go back to packing up camp, look up a few minutes later, and the chemtrail is totally gone. And this wasn't a contrail. For the skeptics out there, you can tell the difference. These ones are a bit lower. They were casting a shadow on the ground. They were big, thick, like streaks that typically, if left alone, they'll spread and eventually create a haze over the entire sky. Contrails will stay up for a little bit. They'll typically just be little segments of it. And, if that's even what
And
it
for
is.
anyone that doesn't know, that it's condensation is like contrails, because I didn't know what that meant when I first heard it. But
the idea is that the engine takes in air and it changes the temperature and it creates ice crystals, and those stay in the air. There's also admitted geoengineering that they're not even hiding. That's a university thing out of Arizona, partnered with Bill Gates. They talk about it openly.
Same as here in Australia, you can actually find on the government websites, you can actually see all of the contracts they have for the geoengineering. It's out there. It's not hard to find.
And they're spraying because they say that they want to block out the sun because of global warming. So whatever.
Anyway, we digress.
Anyways, I cleared 7 of those. So to think of it just a one-off.
I love that we found ourselves there, though. That's funny.
Yeah, just to the side. But you can connect to it consciously. It helps if your etheric field is very clear. So I had slept all night. I built a fire in like a cave. So there was no risk of a forest fire or anything. So I just threw a bunch of big logs into it, let it burn all night. And so when I got up in the morning, it had died down a bit, but there were still embers. But when you are next to a fire, your etheric field can be cleansed, especially because there's all that EMF. It's very relaxing to the butt. Not EMF.
It's native. It's a native EMF.
It's a good infrared.
Yeah.
And infrared heat and all this stuff, but it actually cleanses your etheric field, and you can do more. You're more potent, I think, psychically when you do something to clear it.
Well, and you like slept in nature, like you were literally out camping.
I was playing a didgeridoo. I was doing breath work, like just
getting your shaman on.
Very dialed in. And so the next day I'm just like speaking to it, and then the cloud dispersed. I did that 7 more times. I think 8 in total, 7 or 8 times total. And so it is a repeatable thing. And I've done it here in Australia with some very obvious ones. And there's a video. I can clip it in here if you want, but you can connect to these clouds, and other people have had stories about doing that during massive torrential rains and stuff like that, where you can start to break the clouds open. So go out there and experience it.
As discussed before with Veda Austin's work as well, it's just putting your intention into water. Clouds are just water. I mean, very different in terms of the chemtrail scenario, but I still think there is water in there you can
but also I think it goes further than water, and it's everything.
Everything,
yeah,
very true.
Absolutely.
Consciousness affects
everything. And that's the way this realm works. I often say that this is an interactive realm. This is what we live in. It's like an interactive realm. You can interact. It's interactive, and those people who are just living day to day and not really realizing that it's an interactive realm, that's when life happens to me. I'm a victim of life, as opposed to you can literally interact with this realm any way you want to, and create anything that you desire. Really, the way you want to live your life is you can, no matter what circumstance, you can do whatever you want to create.
Yeah, 100%.
It's exciting, and it's become a bit of a pet peeve of mine when people are like, "Look at the chemtrails! Look what they're doing to us! Look at what!" I'm just like, you have authority over it. Speak it. But the more you complain about it, the more it like latches on and it just stays there, and then nothing's going to change, and it goes like that with a lot of problems in life. The more you point at it and you resist it and you fight it and you're like, or you can just take command and just be like, no, just calmly, just simply. Doesn't have to be this big blow up. Like you're not screaming like Gandalf holding a stick at the sky. You're just like, no, like more like Neo in the Matrix, less Gandalf.
More Neo, less Gandalf, said Isaac Abeta.
Beautiful stuff.
Well, I think that's a beautiful spot to end it and wrap it up, because you guys do have such a positive outlook, and like you just said, we have the power to impact our reality and change things whenever we want, really, for something.
And you guys are literally living proof. What you're doing in your business. Well, so real quick, how long have you been in business with Myoko Embodied?
Well, we started it on another brand in Japan 4 years ago, and then Myoko Embodied is just about to be 2 years.
Yeah, so not a long time.
Just under 2 years.
I've just been seeing, just steady growth. You're both very hard workers, but like you've expressed that you also take time, and you're learning more to take time and to rest and recharge. And then I think we're just going to keep seeing your business growing and growing, and I'm just pumped. I love seeing people succeed. the right kind of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hashtag business besties.
Yeah. Thanks so much for the chat, guys. Awesome chat. And
do you guys have any parting words before you leave? And of course, let everyone know where they can purchase Myoko products and where they can find you out and about as well.
Yeah, well, I think maybe our parting words is just to remember that Myoko Embodied means you are the center of the universe, and you can practice this in small ways in your life to huge ways changing the weather. So just remember, you can start small in the house, but it goes out to the entire universe. So just remember your power, really. And then you can find us on our website, so www.myokoembodied.au. No .com.
There's no .com in there. But we ship all around Australia, and we also ship internationally as well. So for your American listeners and even elsewhere, we ship to America. We shipped to a few people we met up there at the Living Free Festival as well, and to Canada and England and a bunch of other places. So you can find us online, and we'll ship straight to you guys. So
awesome. And you've got the shop now?
And we have our shop as well here in Yamba. And we're always doing events up and down the coast as well. So we're in Sydney in a couple of weeks. And all around Australia doing that kind of stuff. But online's probably the easiest if you're anywhere. So, But if you know us, then you'll probably see us up and down the coast here at markets and events.
Awesome. Beautiful. Thanks so much for coming on, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much for listening and watching, everyone. I really enjoyed that episode, and I hope you did too.
Yeah, I love the conversation, and I just love that so much of what we talked about can be applied to really anything, not just business or relationships. It was just really interesting, the timing of this conversation with the storm, because a lot of what we spoke about can also be applied to that. And I just love Jimmy and Kate's philosophy with everything, with the business, with just how they live life. That's why I think we've clicked with them so well. Just bringing a different level of consciousness to your being. And that's what we're all about at Natural AF.
Yeah, they're good. They're great inspiration. They're optimistic and hopeful. They roll with life's punches, and they don't get down too long about it. So, just remember that when you're going through your own life. Like, everyone faces challenges. They started a business in the middle of COVID. Well, we're stuck in a country that wasn't their home, in Japan. And we're like, hey, we're just going to move out to this freaking cool mountain town and start a business and start selling products at markets, and just eventually figure their way to what they're doing now. And I think that's just an attitude that I really hold near to my heart, is just to keep moving forward. And I often have to remind myself, sometimes it gets very difficult doing things the way we're doing it. Doing a business here in Australia, and also trying to figure out ways to keep it alive in America. But it's challenging. Even though we're small and we're starting out, there's all these amazing happenstances and occurrences, synchronicities, like meeting Barbara O'Neill, like talking to her and having her on the podcast, and having our product stocked at her retreat here in Australia. That's just amazing. Out of this world opportunities will come, but you'll never find out what can happen if you're not playing the game, so to speak, if you're not on the field.
And I love what Kate said about the business is like a mirror, because we have talked about that a lot in terms of relationship. When we had Leanne Lapinto on, and when we were on her podcast, especially, we talked about that. And I just love how Kate put that so simply, because it's really true. I think that any endeavor you take, whether it's a business, whether it's, I liken it to when people go through lawful processes and actually really learn the law and learn their rights. A lot of people say that it's a spiritual experience. And I think that it can be very much the same thing in business, when it is your own products or your thing that you're doing, and it is so close to your heart that everything that you put into it, it does serve as a mirror to you and provide these opportunities for growth. And I definitely see that with Natural Art Form for both of us in different ways. And I think it is because we care so much. It's not like you just go and work for someone else and you don't really care as much if people don't like the product or don't like the service, because it's not yours. It's a very different experience. And I love that. I love the way that they see things. And like I said, it's the principles can be applied to pretty much anything in life.
So If you like this show, please share it with someone that you think might get a lot out of it, and drop us a comment. If you're on Spotify or Apple iTunes, give us a rating and a review on there. That would really go a long way to helping this show get out to more people, helping inspire others and change more lives, and just bring more to the surface on the conversations about conscious living and this cool interconnectedness of spirituality with just practical groundedness and stuff that we like to bring to it.
Yeah. Next week's episode, we have Michael Gray Griffith on from Cafe Locked Out. So a lot of Aussies may be familiar with Michael from Cafe Locked Out. For our international audience that don't know Michael, he began Cafe Locked Out during COVID, when we were basically told that you had to get jabbed to be part of society, and he did not want to comply to that. And he created Cafe Locked Out and just started interviewing people. And since then has traveled the country, conducting hundreds of interviews, really just starting being a voice for the quote unquote anti-vaxxers, which at that time and still now is people that just didn't want to get the COVID vax. And now Cafe Locked Out has really expanded into a channel that just provides a platform for people to have their voice heard. So he interviews people from all walks of life. My mum has actually been involved with him and one of his offshoots of Cafe Locked Out, which is the Cardi Girls, with her group that has been working on the fire ant stuff, the fire ant eradication program, which is another ball of wax. And we might even get mum on to talk about that herself. So we're really keen to have Michael on. Stay tuned for that episode next week.
We look forward to seeing you there. You know where to find us.
See you next time, guys.